Prep with Paps. Today what we're going to talk about is the just war theory. It's a theory that many of you have asked for some revision on, so here we are, we're going to go through it. So the just war theory was designed to make war more acceptable. Now, we've talked before about the fact that Buddhists are pacifists. They do not agree with war because war causes suffering. But we also have some Christian denominations, like the Quakers, who also believe that war is wrong because of the suffering that it causes as well. However, there are many Christians that, although they believe war in general is wrong, sometimes it might be the only option. And this is where the just war theory comes in. So this theory was designed with these conditions up on the screen. And these conditions must be met for that war to be justified or acceptable. Now, as you can see across the top here, we have the kind of categories that the conditions can be split into. So we've got conditions for going to war, we've got how to act when you're in the war, and then how you should act after the war. Now, these up here just add a bit of depth to your answers because it gives you an idea of how it covers all actions. So it's not just about going to war, it includes being in that war and acting after that war. So what we then have down the bottom here are the conditions that, if met, the war could be seen as more justified. Okay, we're not saying it makes the war acceptable or fully acceptable, but at least it gives an idea. If you get a question to do with war, you would be expected to talk about the just war theory. So if you had a 12 mark that said war is never right or war can be acceptable, these are going to add to your answers. So we start with do not take revenge. So if you've been to war, if someone attacks you, you shouldn't take revenge. That should not be the reason for you fighting. We've got it must be a just cause. By that we mean the cause must be fair or good. So good is going to come of it. You're not just going to cause more suffering or more harm. The war ends when someone surrenders or the wrong has been righted. So it might be that the person who has started the war has been removed from power. It might be that they've been captured and imprisoned, therefore that wrong has been righted, therefore stop. War must be the last resort. So they must have tried everything else. They must have tried a compromise, peace talks and things like that. You must be fighting for the right intentions. So you must be fighting, for example, to save lives or to fight for peace, not because you want more land or more money. So not really greed. Only use proportional force. For example, if they're firing bows and arrows at you, you shouldn't be dropping a nuclear bomb on them. Now, I'm not saying that is a realistic idea, but it gives you the idea. So proportional means you shouldn't be going in heavier than they are. Peace terms must be made and all must agree to it. And if they don't all agree, you keep going in those discussions until there's a compromise. There must be a chance of success or winning. There's no point going into battle and war if you know you're going to lose, because that means there is no point to it. So there must be a chance of success. The good done must be bigger than the evil being done. So, for example, think about the Holocaust and the amount of people that died within that. The good that was done was the Allies going in. Well, that good done needed to be bigger than that evil that was being done. So think about how many lives ended up being saved. Even though a lot of life was lost, you could argue that it was justified. You could also argue it wasn't. Only punish those who are directly responsible for the war. So that might be the person who declared the war, it might be people that were very supportive of the war, but don't punish people that had no responsibility for it. Only a legitimate authority can start a war, like a prime minister, or like a monarch, or a president. We're not talking about a rebel leader who's decided that they want more land or more money and want to make a political statement. And then finally, only fight enemy soldiers, protect the innocent. Now, fighting enemy soldiers doesn't mean shoot them dead, okay? It might be disarm them. It's not about just going on a killing spree, but this is the important bit here, protecting the innocent. Now, you do not necessarily need to remember all 12 conditions, although that is amazingly handy. But what you do need to do is make sure that you are aware of some of these and that you're able to explain them. Now, it's likely that if you get a question, a 12 mark, as we've talked about before, you're going to need to think about the strengths and weaknesses of the just war theory. Here we have some of the strengths and weaknesses of that theory, and you need to really think about these. So we start off with it doesn't fit all situations. So those 12 conditions might not always fit into what that war is about, or what is going on, or what is happening. However, if everybody uses it, it can control a war. It can make a war maybe less severe. It might make that war slightly less lethal. But that's only if everybody uses it. However, the issue we've got is ignored by a lot of countries and people. So it's not set in law. It's not a law that they have to follow it. So if you've got one country that follows it and one that doesn't, there's going to be a problem. However, what it does do is it limits the force that can be used by big countries, making the world fairer. And that's with the proportional force. Okay? If everyone is using proportional force, it means you haven't got some big countries using the nuclear weapons, because that's not proportional. It will prevent civilians from being hurt, because if we're avoiding civilians, but also we're trying not to go to war, more lives will be saved. And some lives being saved is better than none. However, if only one side follows it, they're going to lose, because if they're trying to do the right thing, it can cause a problem. However, it can help governments decide when it is right to go to war, so it can give them some criteria to which they then go, now we need to go to war, or not yet. And finally, it could lead to nuclear weapons being used as proportional force. If you've got two countries that own nuclear weapons, they might turn around and say, well, if they've got them, and so have we, let's use them. That is our quick whistle-stop tour of just war theory. Next stage is to find yourself a question and try and use it.